Hello and welcome everyone on this official platform of Legacy Eyes Academy. So recently UPSC has conducted mains examination. So today in this session we are going to discuss the PSIR optional paper first section A. Now section A, which is something related to the political theory, ideology, theories of state, liberty, equality and various other theories. So let's see इस ईयर का पेपर किस तरीके से यूपीएससी ने पूछा हुआ है एंड सभी क्वेश्चंस को पूछने के पीछे पर्पस क्या है यूपीएससी का. सो लेट्स ट्राई टू अंडरस्टैंड ईच एंड एवरी एस्पेक्ट फ्रॉम दिस ईयर पीएसआईआर ऑप्शनल पेपर. As you can see here, first question. So section A, first question. So first question is always related to the short notes. Answer the following question about 150 words. So under this first question, there are 5 parts. 5 questions are there. So as we can see here, the first question which UPSC has asked this year, the 1A, that is explain the philosophical approach टू दी स्टडी ऑफ पॉलिटिकल थ्योरी. तो इस साल यूपीएससी ने क्या पूछा हुआ है, फिलोसॉफिकल अप्रोच पूछा हुआ है विद रिस्पेक्ट टू दी पॉलिटिकल थ्योरी, है ना. सो लेट्स ट्राई टू अंडरस्टैंड दिस क्वेश्चन, हाउ एस्पिरेंट शुड अटेम्प्ट दिस क्वेश्चन. सो फर्स्ट ऑफ ऑल, व्हाई दिस क्वेश्चन इज आस्क्ड. सो इफ यू सी दी पर्पस, है ना, सिलेबस में इसका पर्पस क्या है इस टॉपिक का. सो सी यूपीएससी वांट टू असेस योर ग्रास्प फाउंडेशनल अप्रोचेस रिगार्डिंग द पॉलिटिकल थ्योरी. फाउंडेशनल अप्रोचेस कौन कौन से होते हैं? फॉर एग्जांपल फाउंडेशनल अप्रोचेस लाइक फिलोसॉफिकल, हिस्टोरिकल, नॉर्मेटिव, behavioral, etc. These approaches are there in the syllabus. Okay. Now what is the relevance then? See, philosophical approach के बारे में पूछा जा रहा है, तो relevance क्या है इस approach का? Philosophical approach is the oldest as well as central approach, है ना. Philosophical approach is the oldest. Okay, it is the oldest and central approach in political science, because political science as this discipline came from philosophy only, है ना. Because it shapes the should be aspect of politics. What should be, है ना, what should be the justice, what should be the liberty, equality, all these things. So these are the dimensions that UPSC would like to test here, कि whether you understand what philosophical approach is. Can you differentiate it from empirical or behavioral method? Can you cite thinkers like Plato, Aristotle, all these thinkers? Then can you present it in a concise way within 150 words? So this is the demand of UPSC examination. Clear? That is why they have asked this question. Now, अब आपको इस क्वेश्चन को कैसे अप्रोच करना है एग्जामिनेशन में. फर्स्ट step in the examination is identify the core directive. What is the directive? As you can see here, the directive is explain, है ना. So यहां पे explain दिया हुआ है. So explain is given. That means you should describe what philosophical approach is, its core feature as well as its relevance, है ना. So you have to describe the philosophical approach, its core feature and its relevance. उसका relevance क्या है? Then what you can do, you can break your answer. How you are going to break your answer? है ना, as I have said, IBC, introduction, body and conclusion. In introduction, how you are going to write? Define what philosophical approach in political theory. Then mention that it is concerned with the normative, ethical as well as prescriptive questions, है ना. That is what out to be. So these are the things which you should mention. Then what you are going to write in the body of the answer. अब body में आप क्या लिखेंगे? So you can mention the features of philosophical approaches. Now what are the features? First you can mention normative focus, है ना. Normative focus, like so philosophical, so normative focus hota hai, like justice, liberty, rights, etc. These things are concerned with values as well as ideals, not mere just facts. Clear? Now in this they use reasoning, logic, dialectics, etc. Then what are the thinkers you can quote? You can mention from ancient times, you can quote the thinkers like Plato, Aristotle. Clear? These are ancient thinkers. Plato, justice as harmony. Aristotle, ethics and politics are connected with each other. Modern thinker, then you can quote. A modern thinker कौन से हैं? Which you can quote here. Modern thinkers like T.H. Green. सभी ने क्लास में पढ़ा हुआ है T.H. Green. T.H. Green talks about positive freedom. Okay, he talks about positive freedom. Then you can mention about John Rawls. जॉन रॉल्स के बारे में आप बोल सकते हैं, जस्टिस एज फेयरनेस, है ना, जस्टिस एज फेयरनेस. देन नॉजिक, यू कैन मेंशन अबाउट नॉजिक एज वेल. नॉजिक, लिबर्टेरियन क्रिटिक. क्लियर? सो ऑल दीज थिंग्स यू कैन मेंशन in your answer. Clear? Then you can also mention the methodology, speculative methodology, normative, value laden rather than the empirical. Then overall you can conclude your answer. Now how you are going to conclude your answer, है ना? अब आप अपने आंसर को कैसे conclude करेंगे? So the most important thing, conclusion should be like this: despite the behavioral turn, the philosophical approach remains vital in guiding the debates on justice, है ना, डिबेट्स लाइक ऑन डिस्ट्रीब्यूटिव जस्टिस हो गया, ह्यूमन राइट्स, क्लाइमेट चेंज. क्लियर? ऑल दीज थिंग एज वेल एज मॉरल पर्पस क्या है. क्लियर? देन यू कैन ऑल्सो मेंशन, ये एक एडिशनल चीज होगी जो मैं आपको बता रहा हूं, दैट यू कैन मे बी यू कैन ऐड, though these approaches are challenged by the behavioral scholars, but it remains indispensable for guiding the policy values. समझ में आ रहा है? Now, how to maximize marks in these kind of question? Use keywords. Keywords like normative, prescriptive, what out to be, ethical basis of politics. Use these kinds of keywords. You can quote these scholars briefly, like justice as harmony. Rawls ने क्या था? Justice as fairness. And let me tell you one more thing. Avoid overloading with the history. Do not narrate full evolution. Stay to the point. Clear? And keep it balanced. Don't dismiss other approaches. Just explain this one. Clear? So this you have to write. है ना? So why this is important for UPSC 2025? The reason is UPSC is revisiting the basics. If you see P by Qs from 2023, 2024, if you have gone through those papers, so it had questions on normative as well as empirical. Okay? That is why this is the demand of UPSC. Second question, 1B. Now directly they have asked relation between equality and liberty from multicultural perspective. Now what is the relation between equality and liberty from multicultural perspective? First of all, why this question asked? Because UPSC wants you to link multiculturalism, and multiculturalism scholars like Will Klimlicka, Charles Taylor. Then you can debate on affirmative action, minority rights, group rights, etc. So UPSC wants to test whether you can move beyond classical liberal theory, and you can see how equality, liberty debates evolve in a multicultural as well as plural society. That is the context where ethnic, linguistic and religious diversity is there. So it is actually linked to multiculturalism, and here you can mention the scholar Will Klimlicka, Charles Taylor, all these things. Now, how to approach this question, है ना? तो इंट्रोडक्शन कैसे लिखा जाएगा? How you are going to approach? So introduction should be like, first you need to define the traditional tension. Define traditional tension between equality and liberty. Equality and liberty. Okay. Then you can give the perspective of Berlin. Isaiah Berlin का नाम सुना होगा. Berlin's you can mention Berlin's positive, है ना, Berlin positive versus negative liberty debate. तो ये सारी चीजें आप मेंशन कर सकते हैं अपने इंट्रो में, जस्ट लाइक इंट्रोडक्शन. देन यू कैन मेंशन the body of the answer. Now how you are going to write the body? So you can give here multicultural perspective and see equality not as sameness but as recognition of difference. Clear? And then you can give the perspective of Will Klimnicka. Will Klimnicka ने किस चीज की बात की थी? Minority cultural rights which enhance liberty, not undermine it. Then Charles Taylor, equal recognition of identities strengthens the freedom. Then you can give the example that Indian affirmative action, that is called as reservation, enhances the real liberty of marginalized group. And at last you can conclude your answer that multiculturalism is actually reconciles the equality and liberty through recognition and accommodation of diversity. So this is how you can mention these things. Clear? Now, third question. So this is the difference. You can also mention this is something which is additional. Clear? Now, overall in conclusion, you can also mention about the Amartya Sen. है ना, अमर्त्य सेन ने जिन्होंने आर्ग्यू किया that true liberty involves the capability to achieve well-being which necessitates equality. Clear? Then in conclusion, you can also mention about Nelson Mandela. For to be free is not merely to cast off one chains, but to live in a way that respects and enhances the freedom of others. So these are the scholars where you can mention all these perspectives. Now next question, मैकफर्सन्स व्यू ऑफ पावर. जब भी हम पीएसआईआर क्लास में स्टार्ट करते हैं मैं हमेशा एक चीज बोल देता हूं, विद रेस्पेक्ट टू पावर two thinkers are very important and favorite है यूपीएससी के. one is सीबी मैकफर्सन, second is Foucault. Clear? And this year they have asked about Macpherson's view of power. Now why they have asked Macpherson's view? CB Macpherson is a key liberal theory critique and concept of power is something related to the developmental democracy. So basically ये जो question है, this is going to grasp, this is going to tell UPSC about your conceptual analysis. Now how to approach, how to write the introduction. So you can mention मैकफर्सन as a Canadian political theorist, है ना. मैकफर्सन कौन है, कौन थे? Canadian political theorist who critique liberal democracy. Then after introduction, then you can write body, that where you can differentiate possessive individualism, that is power over developmental power, power over versus power to. So differentiated possessive individualism. So you can mention these things. Then Macpherson's, he saw power as not just domination but capacity for self development, है ना. Capacity for self development. Power should be used wisely. Power can be used to empower others. समझ में आ रहा है? So Macpherson advocated redistribution of resources. Redistribution of resources से क्या होगा? To enable all or you can say to enable everyone to exercise the developmental power. So it is also related to his model of participatory democracy. Clear? So this is something where you can connect it with participatory democracy. So basically if you see the Macpherson's perspective on power dynamics, so Macpherson क्या कहते हैं? Concept of power as rational, है ना. Rational क्यों? And as well as Macpherson ये भी कहते हैं कि because Macpherson views power as inherently relational, that means it exists within the context of relationships between the individual or the groups. So power is not an isolated attribute, but it is exercised through the interactions according to Macpherson. Then Macpherson also talked about power and human potential, है ना. As he said, power should be used to enhance the human potential as well as development. Then he is also a critique of capitalist power structure. आप वो भी view लिख सकते हैं. Then he talked about democratic power. Then he mentioned power as a means to freedom, है ना. that power should be a means to achieve the freedom, not an end in itself. Then he also gave the moral dimension of power. Okay, so these are the things which you can mention. You can give the example of participatory democracy as well. Then you can mention the conclusion. Conclusion, his views integrates the Marxist concerns also, है ना? Marxist concerns with liberal framework, and these things are relevant in welfare and developmental state. So scholar सबसे इंपॉर्टेंट यहाँ पे कौन से सीबी मैकफर्सन, है ना? सीबी मैकफर्सन who talked about the political theory of possessive individualism, democratic theory, then essays in retrieval इन्होंने लिखा है. Clear? All these things you can mention. Then next question, differentiate or difference between Italian and German fascism. बहुत ही सिंपल स्ट्रेट फॉरवर्ड क्वेश्चन यूपीएससी ने पूछा है ना? अब सबसे पहली चीज, व्हाई दिस क्वेश्चन इज आस्क्ड, है ना? नाउ fascism is treated as monolithic, okay, but there are variants of fascism, like Hitler fascism was different than the Mussolini fascism. Clear? So fascism is treated as monolithic. So basically this tests your historical and ideological understanding. How to approach this question? सबसे पहले क्या करोगे? Define fascism, which is authoritarian, ultra-nationalist, anti-liberal, anti-communist, all these things you can mention. So in this you can mention Italian and German fascism. While both were authoritarian, but they differ in ideology as well as execution. है ना? And second important thing which you can write, Italian fascism led by Mussolini, who emphasized on nationalism and corporatism, focusing on the state control as well as unity. German fascism जो था, which is under the control of Hitler, Adolf Hitler, and it was characterized by the racial ideology. German is a superior race, है ना? Particularly anti-Semitic as well as pursuit of Aryan supremacy. So these things you can mention, then you can differentiate between Italian fascism as well as German fascism. ये सारी चीजें आप लिख सकते हैं. बहुत सारे ऐसे thinkers भी हैं like Giovanni Gentile, who influenced Italian fascism. Influenced Italian fascism, है ना? These things you can mention easily. ये सारी चीजें आप लिख सकते हैं अपने क्वेश्चन में. समझ में आ रहा है? Then you can mention about the Alfred, है ना? Alfred Rosenberg, जिन्होंने नाजी आइडियोलॉजी को शेप किया. Alfred Rosenberg shaped Nazi ideology. So these things you can mention, है ना? So in body of the answer easily you can mention the difference, है ना? That Italian fascism is nothing but the it talks about corporatist economy. Less racial obsession was there in Italian fascism. It was more about state supremacy. Monarchy coexisted till 1943 in Italy. Then you can mention about German Nazism, which talks about racial ideology, which is central, that is Aryan supremacy, anti-Semitism, है ना? Hitler ने slogan दिया Lebensraum, Holocaust was started, totalitarian. Clear? All these things you can mention. Then you can easily conclude your answer, है ना? That both the ideologies, both fascisms were dictatorial, but German variant was a more genocidal as well as racially ideological in nature. Clear? Now, important scholars in this kind of question you can mention Hannah Arendt, जिन्होंने बुक लिखी Origins of Totalitarianism for Authority. So here you can mention about the scholar called as Hannah Arendt. Clear? Then you can mention here Ian Kershaw. Nazism was a form of fascism but with more radical and racial ideology. So these things you can mention easily, है ना? The last part In first question, there was elite theory of democracy. Elite. Why this question is asked? This is the core part. Elite theory of democracy. This is the core part of democratic theory approaches. Core part of democratic theory approaches. ये याद रखना है. अब बहुत सारे स्कॉलर्स आपको लिखने को यहां पे मिल जाएंगे. पैरेटो, मॉस्का, है ना, देन मिशेल्स, मिल्स, ऑल दी स्कॉलर्स. पैरेटो को आप मेंशन कर सकते हैं, मॉस्का, मिशेल्स, मिल्स, etc. All these scholars. So this question actually tests your ability to explain it briefly but precisely. है ना? Then how to approach this question? How to approach? In introduction, you should mention, first you should define the elite theory, that democracy is ruled by minority elite rather than true mass rule. So elite theory of democracy, it actually posits that a small privileged group of individuals or elites, they hold the most power in a democratic society, often shaping policies as well as decisions. And you can mention these scholars like C. Wright Mills, Mosca, C. Wright Mills, Mosca, all these scholars you can mention. You know, Mosca ने क्या कहा? That Mosca argue that the true democracy is just an illusion, as elites dominate in political as well as economic sphere. And that is why this theory actually challenges the notion of equal participation, है ना? And which suggests that power is only concentrated among those with resources as well as influence. Then, in body of the answer, you can mention all these scholars. Pareto, who talked about circulation of elites. Then Mosca, political class, inevitable. Michels, iron law of oligarchy, which is very important. That organization became more oligarchic. C. Wright Mills, power elite in US. Then Skumter's elite competition model, which is also considered as realist. That is realist democracy. So there are various examples of elite influence. In many democracies, political campaigns are heavily funded by the wealthy individuals as well as corporations, which giving them significant sway over the elected officials. So these things you can mention. Then you can mention the challenges to elite theory. है ना? आप easily क्या mention कर सकते हो? Challenges. Challenges to elite theory. You can mention the challenges, है ना? That this theory is also challenged by the pluralist theories, है ना? Who argue that existence of multiple competing interest group, and these theories suggest that power is more dispersed and that various groups can influence policy outcomes. Then, with respect to conclusion, how you are going to write conclusion? You can criticize for elitism, है ना? Conclusion में you can criticize for elitism. At the same time, explain the realities of, but it explain realities of modern representative democracy. है ना? So likewise you can mention the conclusion. आप conclusion लिख सकते हैं. Clear? So in this way you can easily attempt these questions. Clear? Now second question. Now long questions comes. है ना? So second question, which has 3 parts. Second A. What is the Marxist and liberal approach towards the state? Marxist and liberal approach towards state. And on what grounds the theoretical differences between them are premised? Explain. है ना? So this question is of 20 marks. अब इस question को कैसे attempt किया जाए? Why this question is asked? Purpose क्या है यहाँ पे? सबसे पहले ये समझना है. See, it talks about Marxist and liberal approach toward the state. State. And as we know, state is the core concept. It is the core concept in political science. है ना? It is the core concept in political science. So, Marxist versus liberal approaches, these things represents two foundational and opposing paradigms. Foundational and opposing paradigms. Clear? ये डिमांड है. So this question actually examines your ability to compare and contrast theories like liberal versus Marxist. Then you can show philosophical and ideological roots, individualism versus class struggle. Then you can cite these scholars. कौन कौन से scholars आप cite कर सकते हैं? John Locke, Hobbes, Rousseau. Okay, these scholars. Now these scholars are for liberalism. Okay, then you can mention these scholars: Karl Marx, Engels, Lenin. Clear? Then you can mention Gramsci also. Yes, Gramsci is very important. These are for Marxist approaches. Easily आप ये question कर सकते हैं and relate to the nature, role and purpose of the state. Now, so this question is actually asked, है ना? If you see, so this question is actually asked because the theoretical difference on the state define the broader ideological conflict in the history as well as policy and contemporary politics. Okay, so likewise you can easily write the introduction as well as body and conclusion, है ना? तो अब आप introduction लिख सकते हैं easily. You can define the state and mention two approaches, liberal and Marxist approach, है ना? So example is given here. Concept of state is central concern to political theory, has been conceptualized differently by liberal as well as Marxist tradition. Liberal, they see state as neutral, arbitrary to protect the individual liberty, okay, as well as property. Marxists, they view as an instrument of class domination, who serves the interest of elite or ruling class or capitalist class. This is how you can mention, है ना? Then you can also quote various scholars. So in body, you can first give the liberal approach to the state, and with respect to the liberal approach, core idea state as neutral empire ensuring liberty, property, है ना, right to life, all these things. ये सारी चीजें आप mention कर सकते हैं, rule of law, है ना? Then you can mention philosophical roots, classical liberalism के जो scholar हैं, John Locke, Bentham, Adam Smith, all these scholars, इन्होंने क्या कहा? They talked about minimal state, night watchman state, है ना? They talked about minimal state or night watchman state. Then neoliberal scholar Hayek and Nozick, they talked about rolling back welfare, rolling back welfare intervention, and it talks about market primacy, है ना? Then apart from this, you can mention about social liberal scholar T.H. Green, Lasky. They said that state as enabler of positive liberty, है ना? Then you can mention the features. Easily you can mention the features like consent based, social contract, जो है Hobbes का, all these things you can mention easily. Then Marxist approach to the state. For them, the core idea is state is an instrument of class rule, serving bourgeois interest in capitalism. So philosophical roots कहां से आए? Karl Marx and Engels. Karl Marx, Engels, they say that state is the super, ये क्या कहते हैं? State as superstructure. Okay, state as superstructure which is determined by the economic base. Lenin says that state as special bodies of armed men, which requires withering away the post-revolution. Gramsci talks about hegemony. State is both coercive as well as ideological. So easily you can mention these things. Then you can also mention about the differences, you know. Then In conclusion, you can give the contemporary relevance. Like you can briefly reflect the neo-Marxist, Pollinger's, and post-Marxist, Laclau and Morphy. They now see state as more complex entity. Liberals increasingly accept the idea of welfare and regulatory roles, which is based on Keynes theory, social democracy. So both the views actually influence contemporary debates on globalization. Also, it talks about the welfare state, retrenchment, equality, etc. So easily आप इस क्वेश्चन को कर सकते हैं. Then next question, Karl Popper represents a defense of open society against its enemies. Elaborate. Very important question. Now, why this question is asked? Popper is central to 20th century political philosophy, especially in the context of fascism, totalitarianism, and communism. That is why he gave various ideas also. His work, Open Society and Its Enemies, where he criticized Plato, Hegel, Karl Marx for their historicist tendencies. And he also defends liberal democracy, individual freedom, as well as piecemeal social engineering. तो ये सारी चीजें इन्होंने लिखी हुई हैं अपनी बुक में, तो इजीली आप इसको अटेम्प्ट कर सकते हैं. Introduction mein first you have to define the open society. What is open society? A society where individual can freely criticize, where government is accountable, as well as social reforms are incremental. Then you can quote, open society is one which individual are confronted with personal decision. ये किसने कहा है? पॉपर ने कहा है. Clear? Then you can, now in body of the answer, now you can mention first of all what is open society, then second important, now open society, in this you have to mention the based on critical rationalism, based on critical rationalism. Then second thing you can mention here is the enemies of open society. अब enemies of open society यहां पर आप मेंशन कर सकते हैं प्लेटो के बारे में, where he criticized Plato, he criticized Hegel, he criticized Karl Marx, all these things you can mention easily. Then another important thing, Popper's defense, he advocate about piecemeal social engineering, that means gradual reform की बात कर रहे हैं. So he actually talked about gradual reforms versus utopian social engineering, that is radical revolution. Clear? Then apart from this you can also mention his critical rationalism, that institutions must allow falsification and correction. Then you can mention the relevance. अब relevance क्या है? He gave his defense. ये जिस सेंचुरी में आ रहे हैं, at that time period fascism was there, so defense against totalitarian, okay, totalitarianism, Nazi, fascist, communist regime, etc. And at last you can conclude. So you can reflect on enduring the relevance in the era of digital surveillance, fake news, as well as populism. Then you can mention Popper's legacy influencing liberal democracies and European Union human rights framework. So Karl Popper you can mention in this question. Isaiah Berlin के बारे में आप mention कर सकते हैं, positive versus negative liberty, which also have similar concerns. Hayek के बारे में mention कर सकते हैं, Hayek, who shared anti-totalitarian view. Clear? Now, next question. This is the last part of the second question. Explain how John Rawls used liberal and egalitarian perspective to develop his concept of distributive justice. John Rawls. Why this question is asked? John Rawls is the most influential 20th century liberal philosopher. So UPSC wants to test your grasp of a theory of justice of 1971. That how John Rawls reconciles liberty, that is liberalism, with equality, that is egalitarianism. है ना? So UPSC आपसे क्या चाहती है? You should have the ability to explain his principle of justice as well as original position and difference principles. Clear? Now, what should be the approach? अब आंसर का अप्रोच क्या होना चाहिए? फर्स्ट इंट्रोडक्शन, तो स्टार्ट करिए क्वेश्चन को विद हिज एम जस्टिस इज द फर्स्ट वर्च्यू ऑफ सोशल इंस्टीट्यूशन, है ना. देन स्टेट दैट ही sought to create a fair system of distributive justice, balancing the freedom also as well as equality. So these things you can mention easily in your introduction. And after writing the wonderful introduction, you can mention the body of the answer. Body में क्या लिखोगे? First, John Rawls method लिख दीजिए, है ना. John Rawls method, like original position and veil of ignorance का concept. Then two principles of justice. First principle is liberal, है ना. First is liberal. Second principle, first principle जब हम कहते हैं liberal, that means that talks about equal basic liberties for all, freedom of speech सबके लिए होनी चाहिए, conscience everyone. Second principle, egalitarianism, which talks about fair equality of opportunity. Then third important thing here you can mention the liberal aspect, है ना, protection of basic liberties like negative liberty focus and non-sacrifice of individual rights for the aggregate welfare. So these things you can mention. Then you can mention the egalitarian aspect. Egalitarian aspect, that is redistributive justice. Redistributive, you can mention about redistributive justice. So state intervention to ensure the fairness in outcomes. Then at last you can mention the criticism. Nozick, है ना. Nozick is the libertarian thinker who talked about that he violates the property rights. Communitarian aspect आप लिख सकते हैं, which talks about abstract who ignores, है ना. तो अब communitarians ने भी criticize किया है कि John Rawls actually his ideas are abstract and ignores the community ties. Then at last you can conclude your answer, है ना. So while writing the conclusion you can easily mention John Rawls inspired welfare state reform, social democracy as well as global justice debates, and still he is relevant in terms of wealth inequality as well as affirmative action. So these are some important things which you can mention in this question. Okay, now अब जो next question है, that is third, and there are three things. Provide a comparative analysis of behavioral and institutional approach to the study of political theory. Very important. This time they have asked questions, two questions from political theory. है ना? Why this question? Because behavioralism and institutionalism, these things represents two major methodological approaches in political theory. So basically UPSC wants to test your understanding how there was a shift from traditional institutional study to behavioralism, है ना. So it talks about post behavioral synthesis as well as continuity relevance. Now how to write this answer? Define both in introduction. Institutionalism, that is studies formal structure, constitution, legislature ये, and then behavioralism, focus on the behavior of individual group, है ना, decision making, all these things. So you can mention these things in behavioralism. Then you can mention the behavioral evolution in 1950s, and the key figure was David Easton, Gabriel Almond. All these things you can mention easily here. Then in the body of the answer, first you can mention the institutional approach. Institutional approach. Now, institutional approach was dominant till Second World War. Yes, it focuses on formal legal structure, constitutional laws, etc. यहाँ पे scholars कौन से होंगे? Woodrow Wilson, then James Bryce. All these scholars are here, है ना. Then you can mention about the behavioral approach. Then easily you can mention about behavioral approach. Emerge as scientific revolution, focus empirical, value free, then observation, observable behavior पे focus था. Tools कौन से use किए? Survey research, statistical method, all these things. Clear? Then you can see this table. easily you can differentiate between institutional and behavioral. And at last, you can mention about David Easton's call. David Easton's call. When? 1969. He said relevance plus action oriented theory is needed. Clear? So these things you can easily mention, and at last you can conclude your answer that both the approaches are complement each other today. And neo-institutionalism integrates behavioral insights also. Clear? Now, second part of third question. State does the greatest harm to mankind by destroying individuality, which lies at the root of all progress. Mahatma Gandhi elucidate. Why this question is asked? Gandhian thought is very important. Clear? Now, Gandhian thought is very important for Indian political thought. And ये quotation क्या reflect कर रहा है? His critique of the state and his idea of Swaraj, self-rule, decentralization and non-violence. So basically this overall this question actually tests your ability that you should be able to link Gandhian philosophy with the modern concerns like centralization, individual liberty, all these things. Clear? So easily you can write the introduction. So you can start with the quote or its meaning that Gandhi saw the state as a potential source of oppression when it overrides individual conscience. Because whatever Gandhi is writing, that he was writing in the background of imperialism, imperial state, है ना? तो गांधी का व्यू क्या है स्टेट के लिए? स्टेट एज सोललेस मशीन एंड सेंट्रलाइज्ड पावर destroys the individuality. Clear? Then individuality is the root of progress. Swaraj, self-rule at personal as well as community level. Then you can mention about the implications. है ना? He advocated for the minimal state, moral authority, self-reliant villages. इन सभी चीजों के बारे में गांधी जी ने बात किया है. Then criticism. His ideas are considered utopian by Nehru as well as Ambedkar. So modern complex societies requires the stronger state mechanism. So overall you can write the conclusion also in a very easy way, है ना, कि आप बहुत ही अच्छे से लिख सकते हैं इन conclusion इस आंसर का. Then you can mention about Gandhi and his book Hind Swaraj. Then you can give the supporting views like Vinoba Bhave who talked about Sarvodaya, JP Narayan total revolution. Critics कौन कौन मेंशन कर सकते हैं इस क्वेश्चन में? अंबेडकर, स्टेट एज एन इंस्ट्रूमेंट ऑफ सोशल रिफॉर्म. नेहरू who talked about plan economy. Then the last part of third question, है ना, last part, explain how the slogan personal is political addresses the issue of women oppression and discrimination. Very important question. और ये हमने हर बार हर बैच में पहली चीज हम यही डिस्कस करते हैं when we talked about Plato and all. This slogan is from the second wave of feminism 1960s to 70s, which critiques the division between the private domestic sphere as well as public sphere. Okay, so this question is actually related to the radical feminism. So this UPSC likes to test your understanding of feminist political theory, especially radical as well as socialist feminism. Clear? Writing approach the same. Introduction, mention the origin. This personal is political coined by the or popularized by the Carol Hanisch in 1969 essay. Then you can mention the personal and domestic life, family and all, which is shaped by the political structure. Political structure is dominated by the patriarchy according to feminists. Then in body you can give the traditional view, feminist critique, है ना, कि किस तरीके से it is going to address the oppression and all. Clear? Last, conclusion कैसा होना चाहिए? Now how to write the conclusion, है ना, मैं हमेशा कहता हूं conclusion आपका एक revolutionized way में लिखो, है ना, futuristic should be there. So this slogan personal is political actually revolutionized the feminist movement. And today you can connect it with, today it extend to the debates on LGBT, okay, LGBT rights, then rights at workplace harassment as well as reproductive autonomy. So these things you can mention easily. Clear? Then fourth question, The foundational base of Western democracy has been shaped by John Locke ideas of constitutionalism, freedom and property. So basically, UPSC wants to see you if you can link John Locke theories with the modern Western democratic foundations like US, UK constitution. Then cover his ideas on constitutionalism, okay, cover his ideas on liberty, property as well as consent. Then you have to provide the critical insight like Marxist, feminist and post-colonial critique. Okay, so the first thing that you have to mention, a wonderful introduction. Briefly define John Locke contribution, and जब आप contribution define करेंगे then you have to mention this book, Two Treatises of Government, which provides the philosophical blueprint for liberal constitutionalism as well as modern representative democracy. Then in body of the answer, you can mention about constitutionalism, that government as a fiduciary trust. Then you can talk about separation of power, social contract, everything. Then second important thing you can mention about freedom, right to life, liberty, and estate, etc. So freedom is non-domination and not license. Then you talk about property, labor theory of property, private property as natural rights. Then you can mention the impact on Western democracy, how it impacted Western democracy. For example, US Declaration of Independence, Jefferson's due ideas on John Locke. Then British constitutional monarchy, clear, French Revolution ideals. Then criticism mention कर दीजिए, C.B. Macpherson view, clear, which says that John Locke theory justified expropriation in colonial ideas. So John Locke actually laid the foundation, but modern democracy evolved with universal suffrage, welfare as well as human rights. Clear? Now next question, fourth B. Now fourth B question क्या कह रहा है? Now fourth B question is something which is related to the Hannah Arendt. Analyze few categories of vita activa. Clear? अब ये क्वेश्चन इसलिए because Arendt is the major 20th century political thinker and she is known for her work The Human Condition in 1958. Vita activa is central to her analysis. That is, इसका मतलब है human activities in public realm. So UPSC actually testing you regarding the conceptual clarity of the labor, work and action. So how to write this answer? First, in introduction, you have to define the vita activa. This is the Hannah Arendt concept to describe the activities of life of human in the contrast of contemplative. Clear? And three categories are there. Labor, तो अब Hannah Arendt ने कहा three categories are there. Labor, work and action. Labor, human activities, labor, work and action. Now labor, biological survival activities. Work, creation of durable artifacts, artificial world of things, tools, building and all. Action, interaction in public realm, speech, political action जो आपका है. Clear? So for Hannah Arendt, action is the highest form of human activity. Then you can critique also that it is too nostalgic for Greek polis, city states. It has underestimated the social and economic struggle. And then last you can conclude your answer, है ना? Last आप conclude कर सकते हैं that Arendt analysis remains relevant in the debates of public participation versus consumer society. Clear? So these things you can mention easily. Then the last question, do you think legitimacy acquired by consent or manufactured by indoctrination is essential element in maintenance of political rule? Justify your answer with relevant example. Question किस लिए पूछा गया? Legitimacy is the central theme in political authority. Clear? यहां पर आप Weberian concept of legitimacy भी लिख सकते हैं. Clear? How regimes maintain rule via consent, democracy, indoctrination. Clear? So how you are going to take this question? First, in introduction, you have to mention, define the legitimacy, belief in rightfulness of rule. यहां पर आप कोट कर सकते हैं Max Weber, David Bentham. Power becomes authority when it is regarded as legitimate. Clear? Then body of the answer. Now body of the answer बहुत अच्छा होना चाहिए because here you have to mention the examples also. So in body of the answer, legitimacy by consent. Then legitimacy by indoctrination, like legitimacy कैसे आती है? use of propaganda, ideology, education, religion, etc. Example, नाजीज ने किस चीज का प्रोपेगेंडा का यूज किया? स्टालिन, यूएसएसआर मॉडल, माओइस्ट, चाइना. So these things you can mention. Now, is it essential? So the reason is, the answer here should be both consent as well as indoctrination create the compliance. So legitimacy actually reduces the coercion cost and it enhances the stability, है ना? Then critical view आप लिख सकते हैं, indoctrination is fragile, consent based legitimacy is more durable. And at last you can mention the conclusion that sustainable political rule combines the performance legitimacy, that is delivery of welfare, as well as democratic consent. This is how you should attempt this question. So this is all about section A. Now we are going to discuss about section B. Thank you. So now we are going to discuss paper 1 section B. So as we have seen in section A, straightforward questions are there. Now let's see what was the scenario this time from paper 1 section B in PSIR optional. So the first question from section B, that will start from question 5. Okay. Now again, fifth question has 5 parts and you have to write these answers within 150 words. Now fifth A. Now what was the question as you see here? 1857 revolt. Okay. Or you can say they have asked some of the important things with respect to the peasant movements after 1857. Now this is something which is related to freedom struggle also. That is the scenario after 1857 revolt. So question is explaining briefly the role of peasant movements after 1857 and before independence. Peasant movements after 1857 and before independence. This is the question. Now, first of all, why this question is asked? So let me tell you, UPSC wants to test your understanding with respect to the agrarian struggle as a force in shaping the Indian nationalism, because it is given in your PSIR syllabus, national movement, and topic role of peasantry. So basically UPSC आपको यहाँ क्या चाहती है? UPSC wants you to move beyond mere events, है ना? And show how they contributed to national consciousness. So basically यहाँ पर अप्रोच है, यहाँ पे UPSC डिमांड है कि UPSC wants to test your the approach, है ना? Approach is related that small movement, like what was the role of peasants, है ना? Peasants का role क्या है, किस तरीके से national consciousness आया 1857 के बाद, that is the demand. So basically we need to understand how they contributed to national consciousness. Okay, how they contributed to the national consciousness. Now what should be the approach? Now your approach should be chronological as well as analytical. That means you should not provide only a list like Indigo, Peasant Revolt, Mongla Revolt in 1921, and the Kisan Sabha, all these things. But you have to tell how they are linked with larger politics. That is the main thing that you have to mention in your answer. Second, you have to mention their character. What was the character of those movements? So those were mere localized, and how they are linked to nationalist movement. And then you can end with their limitations. Like these kind of movements were fragmented, caste-based, localized. All these things can be mentioned. So how you are going to write the introduction? So how will you write introduction? Now introduction should be like, you can start with 1857 as the first major peasant, है ना? You can start 1857 revolt as if first major peasant revolt, first major peasant revolt, or you can say peasant sepoy uprising, है ना? Peasant sepoy uprising. This you can mention, and it is followed by a phase of localized revolt. Then how you are going to write the body of the answer? First we have to mention early revolts. So in body, first mention early revolts. Now early revolts like Indigo revolt of 1860, Deccan Right you can mention, है ना? Indigo 1860, then Deccan Right, all these things. So why these revolts happened? Because of economic distress. Clear? Early revolts you can mention. Then you can mention Gandhian era peasant revolt. Gandhian era peasant revolt. Now what are the Gandhian era peasant revolt? Champaran, Kheda, Bardoli, and then linked this Congress. Then you can mention leftist influence. Leftist influence as well. All India Kisan Sabha 1996, Tebaga, Telangana, clear? And then you can mention the role. Politicized peasants, questioned, they started questioning the zamindari, and then linked with nationalism as well as class struggle. This is how you can easily attempt this question. Then at last you can mention the conclusion. Now conclusion. Now how you should write conclusion? That despite fragmentation, it laid the foundation. You can mention despite fragmentation, it laid the foundation for post-independence. है ना? Post-independence. What kind of reforms? Agrarian reforms. Agrarian reforms. This is how you can easily mention. Then what are the scholars that you should mention? So scholars you can mention Rudolph and Rudolph. Rudolph and Rudolph. Now Rudolph and Rudolph said peasants became foot soldiers of nationalism. Bipin Chandra ने क्या कहा? Gandhian movement gave them a moral edge. Clear? So this is how you should address this question. Next, fifth B, write a note on the Dalit perspective of Indian national movement. Straightforward question. है ना? Whatever the things that you have written in your PSI paper के जो notes हैं आपके, वही आपको ऐसे लिखना है. Why is asked? First of all, the question why this question is asked. है ना? So it is something which is related to subaltern perspective, that is depressed classes perspective. Was the freedom struggle inclusive or upper class dominated or upper caste dominated? है ना? So here you have to connect with Ambedkar, Congress, and Gandhi tension as well as Dalit critics. Now what should be the approach? Approach क्या होना चाहिए? Mention mainstream nationalists, है ना? Who neglect. So mainstream nationalists they neglect of past operation. Second, Dalit leaders you can mention. Political freedom is not equal to this social freedom. Okay. Then key events you can mention Pune Pact between Gandhi and Ambedkar, depressed class movement, then Independent Labour Party. All these things you can mention in your answer. Now how to write? So first of all, in introduction, briefly define Dalit perspective. है ना? That they sought annihilation of caste alongside the independence. And Dalit perspective on the Indian national movement, it highlights the struggle for social justice and equality also. So this perspective highlights social justice, political equality, है ना? These you can mention easily. Clear? Then so this is alongside the fight for independence. Then you can mention thinkers like B.R. Ambedkar. You can mention thinkers B.R. Ambedkar. अब Ambedkar साहब ने क्या किया था? Ambedkar critiqued the movement for sidelining caste issues, and he also emphasized that true freedom required dismantling caste system. Then you can mention Jyotirao Phule, Periyar also, that they also advocated for the rights of marginalized communities, and they were also arguing that political freedom was incomplete without social reforms. So the perspective, Dalit perspective, so this perspective underscores the need for an inclusive approach to the nation building. Then how you are going to write the body of the answer? Then you can mention Ambedkar critique of Congress, है ना? In body you can mention Ambedkar critique of Congress. Clear? That political democracy without social democracy is a myth. And Dalit demands separate electorate, है ना? Reservation, representation, those things have to be mentioned. Then movements, important Dalit movements you can mention like Maharashtra Satyagraha, Temple and movement, all India Scheduled Caste Federation. Then tensions with Congress. So outcome was Pune Pact of 1932, you can mention. And then at last you can conclude your answers that Dalit perspective actually widened the meaning of freedom and it influenced the post-independence constitutional safeguards. Now, who are these scholars that can quote in this kind of question? So, सबसे important scholar है Gail Mongway. जी हाँ. Gail Mongway. Then you can mention B.R. Ambedkar. Now Gail Mongway, he said Dalit movement was a revolution within a revolution. Revolution. Dalit movement was a revolution within revolution. B.R. Ambedkar, he said we are not a minority, we are the original inhabitants of this country. Okay? So easily you can write this question. Then third question. So this is something where you can compare also general perspective, Indian national movement and Dalit perspective. Clear? General perspective given by Jawaharlal Nehru and Gandhi. Clear? Now next question. Land reforms program led to some constitutional amendment. Comment. So this question also asked in 10 marks. So basically the demand here is BSc trying to link land reform with zamindari abolition, tenancy reform, ceilings and with constitutional evolution, like first constitutional amendment, fourth constitutional amendment, 17th, then 44th amendment. So basically main thing here, UPSC is trying to test the federalism and socio-economic justice understanding in this question. Now what should be the approach for this question? How to write this question or what should be the approach? First thing you should mention why amendments were needed. There you can give the example of right to property dispute. Initially it was a fundamental right, then it was made a constitutional right. Then you can link each phase of reform with corresponding amendments. So basically how you are going to write? So first you have to write the introduction. Now, how will you write the introduction first of all? Okay. That after independence, land reforms were the key for agrarian justice. So, in post-independence, land reforms key to agrarian justice as well as socialism. Okay, as well as socialism. That is why it faces judicial hurdles also. Now, when we say judicial hurdles, what are the important cases? Kameshwar Singh, Sajjan Singh case को mention कर दो. Kameshwar. Then you can mention another case. Sajjan Singh. Okay, this is how you should write. Then in body of the answer, you can mention First Amendment of 1951 and 9th Schedule for Zamindari abolition. Then you can mention in body of the First Amendment, you can mention in body. Then 4th Amendment you can mention 1955. Compensation principles has been changed. Then 17th Amendment of 1964. Now this amendment says or it protected more laws in 9th Schedule. Then you can mention 44th Amendment of 1978, which made right to property straight to legal right in Article 380. So what was the outcome? Enabled redistribution but uneven success. Then you can easily mention in conclusion that constitutional amendments reflected state socialist commitment versus property rights. Clear? Now what are the important scholars? You can mention famous scholar D.D. Basu. D.D. Basu said 9th Schedule was constitution within our constitution. D.D. Basu ने क्या कहा? This 9th Schedule is constitution within constitution. Then you can mention M. Gallagher. M. Gallagher said that Indian land reforms revolution by due process. So these are the things you can mention. Then next question. Delineate the key factors that have shaped the evolving political landscape in Jammu and Kashmir post 2019. Now this question is something which is related to current affairs, federalism plus external security. Now the event is important after 2019. Post 2019, abrogation of Article 370 in Jammu and Kashmir on 5th of August 2019. Clear? Then delimitation demographic politics also you can see. Now what should be the approach? Approach should be first you mention August 2019 development that Article 370 and 35A abrogation and bifurcation of Jammu and Kashmir into the union territories. Then what you can do, then you can analyze the factors shaping the politics like security, centralization, then delimitation, elections, militancy, investment push, all these you can mention. So how are you going to write? So first of all, in introduction, how will you write? With respect to introduction, let me tell you, first you should mention that 2019, this year marked a paradigm shift in Jammu and Kashmir constitutional status. Okay. That is, the political landscape of Jammu and Kashmir has undergone the significant transformation in post 2019, primarily due to the abrogation of Article 370 by the Indian government, which has actually removed the special status. Now, who are these scholars who have analyzed this event? Famous scholar Pratap Bhanu Mehta. Then you can mention Pratap Bhanu Mehta. Now Pratap Bhanu Mehta, he said he aimed to integrate the region more closely with India, but it has led to increased tensions as well as a reconfiguration of local political dynamics. And that is why the reorganization took place and Jammu and Kashmir is divided into two union territories. This is actually further point in the governance. Clear? Then how are you going to write the body of the answer? How to write body of the answer? So first you can mention centralization happened. Why centralization? Because Jammu and Kashmir region, it has become union territories. LG Ulki, Lieutenant Governor, which has actually delayed the assembly election. Then you can mention about demographic and political engineering, that is delimitation 2022. Then you can mention about security perspective, decline in organized militancy, but rise in hybrid militancy now. Then you can mention economic initiatives. New land laws, investment policies, all these things. Then regional responsibility, disenchantment will be value versus participation in government. Then overall you can conclude your answer nicely. Okay. So overall you see the question is not tough. Now what are the scholars that I can mention here? You can mention about Arundhati Roy, then Hapgood Jacob के बारे में आप देख सकते हैं, बहुत सारे इंटरव्यूज आते हैं, and he mentioned in post 2019 security first democracy leader approach has been followed. Then you can mention Chatham House report of 2022. Political alienation still persists. Clear? Now the next question in fifth. So as you can see here, fifth, how far has the National Human Rights Commission has been successful in achieving its objective? Full stop. Very simple question, straightforward question. Achievement will have to mention with respect to NHRC. Now why this question is asked? First of all, this is going to test your critical evaluation skill for this kind of institutions. Then NHRC often use custodial death आपका human right violation etc. तो अब आपका अप्रोच क्या होना चाहिए? What should be the approach? Mention mandates, है ना, of National Human Rights Commission. So there you can mention the Protection of Human Rights Act of 1993. Then you can mention the success as well as limitations. Clear? So how you are going to write this question? First of all, you have to write the introduction about NHRC, which act as a watchdog of human rights in India, and this was set up in 1993. Then body of the answer, you can mention the success like public awareness, sumo notices, custodial death reports, role in AFA debate, like in Manipur 2004. Then you can mention limitations. Now what are the limitations? The role of NHRC is just advisory in nature. Okay. Advisory in nature. No binding powers. No binding powers. No vacancies. They are dependent on government. Dependence on government. These things you can mention. Clear? Then local standards FCC, Paris principle compliance issues. Clear? Then you can also mention if no case study, you can mention case study as well. Okay. Now what can case study can mention? Like investigation into the custodial deaths in Tamil Nadu, which has actually brought the attention to the need for police reforms. Then at last we can easily conclude this question that NHRC has contributed to our right culture, but it still needs greater autonomy. It needs seat, it needs resources. It is just about advisory. Clear? Now what are the facts scholars that can mention here? Justice J.S. Verma. इन्होंने क्या कहा? He said NHRC accomplished like without enforcement powers. Then you can mention Amnesty report of 2023. NHRC often silent on systematic or systemic violence. Clear? Now next question 6. Parliamentary committees are indispensable to the legislative process. It provides for the opportunity for cross-pollination between two chambers of the parliament. Cross-pollination that is participation, exchange of ideas between the members of two houses. So there are various mechanisms, clear, which we can mention in this question. So first of all, we need to understand UPSC wants to evaluate their role in the legislative scrutiny, bicameral collaboration as well as accountability. Okay. Now what should be the approach? First thing is you should define and classify committees like standing ad hoc, departmental, the standing committees, all these things you can mention. Then you can mention the indispensability, detailed scrutiny, expert input, bipartisan functioning. Then you can mention the cross-pollination. That there are various committees which include the member from both Lok Sabha as well as Rajya Sabha, which actually create the legislative coherence. Then you can mention this limitations, that how this decline in referrals, political interference or lack of, you can say, binding power are there. Then how to reform these things? So you can mention mandatory referrals, public participation, better research support. ये सारी चीजें होनी चाहिए. This is how you can write this answer. Clear? And you can also mention one of the political theorists in the introduction, whose name is Walter Begott Committee. There is one committee, Walter Begott Committee. You can mention about this committee in the introduction. Now, he said, Walter Begott said, that committees are the workshop of parliament, whether the real work is done or not. But they enable cross-pollination of tasks or cross-pollination of ideas, which allow for diverse perspective as well as expertise to enhance the legislative outcomes. So this actually ensures more comprehensive and effective governance. Then, how you are going to write the body of the answer? So already मैंने आपको बता दिया body में क्या लिखेंगे? First you have to mention the functions. What do you have to mention? You have to mention the functions, scrutiny of bills, financial oversight. Clear? So policy reviews. Then PAC, Public Accountability Committee, Estimate Committee. All these things you can mention. Then cross-pollination example. What are the examples of cross-pollination? So what are the examples of cross-pollination? You can mention that like departmental standing committees on finance, defense, departmental standing committees on finance, defense. They have members from both the houses. Now what are the impact? So with respect to impact, you can give the example of GST bill scrutiny, personal data protection review. All these things you can mention easily, and then you can easily conclude your answer. Clear? That these things remain the nervous center of the legislative work. Who said this? This is said by. So in conclusion, you can mention this is said by Subhash Kashyap. Subhash Kashyap. Clear? But he said there is a need for strengthening. Then you can mention about Edmund Burke, when emphasizing the importance of deliberation in governance. So likewise you can give wonderful answer. Clear? Now next question. 6B. Examine the constitutional provisions and nature of advisory jurisdiction of Supreme Court of India. Evaluate your answer with relevant example. First of all, why this question is asked? So let me tell you, UPSC wants to test Article 143. Article 143, which is something related to advisory jurisdiction, and it has relevance in the contemporary politics, like Ayodhya case, 1994, Northeast State dispute, CAA reference. So not yet then. Clear? So basically, it seeks to assess your ability so that you can link constitutional text with judicial practice. So this is the approach. First we have to define the advisory jurisdiction. In introduction you can mention advisory jurisdiction kya hai. It is non-binding advice to the president. Second, you can discuss the body of the answer. You can discuss the constitutional basis that Article 143 sub clause 1. Now Article 143 sub clause 1 says that any matter related to law or public importance. Article 143 sub clause 2 talks about pending disputes from pre-constitutional treaties. And then you can analyze its nature, which is consultative, which is not binding, but carries very important role. Clear? So here you mentioned various cases like Berubari Union case of 1960, Ayodhya 1994, North-East State boundary disputes, and at last you can get to critical evaluation. Seldom now present rarely refers matter due to the political polarization. So these things you can easily mention. Clear? So you can quote Article 143, President may refer. Okay. In body, you can mention the scope and limitation. Body में क्या लिखोगे? Scope and limitation. Okay. Scope and limitation. Nature in body, it is advisory. This is advisory nature. That is not binding. Okay. But it is often respected. So various examples you give. Berubari case, that is Parliament for secession of territory. Then you can give special reference of Ayodhya case. It was rejected. Then you can put to debate. It actually create redundant parliament system. Clear? Then you can provide a large number of examples with respect to these kind of questions. Okay. So this is how you can write. Then you can mention about special court bill case of 1978, where President sought the Supreme Court's opinion on the constitutionality of the special court bill. वो भी आप mention कर सकते हो. There are number of cases. Just give example of 3 or 4 cases. 2G spectrum case of 2012. वो भी आप दे सकते हो. Clear? So the question is something which is related to the current case. So overall, how you have to write the conclusion? Conclusion should be like this advisory jurisdiction is still remains symbolic value as a consultative tool, but it requires revival for cooperative federalism. Okay. So here you can mention about various scholars like HM, Sirwai, advisory opinions are not law but respected wisdom. Law Commission 123 report, they suggested clearer guidelines for its use. Okay. So now 6 part C. The question is, the recent development in Indian politics has not eroded the true spirit of federalism in India. Critically against this statement with the help of appropriate example. देखो यहाँ पे बेस्ट पार्ट क्या है ना? In every question they are asking example. It checks the awareness, है ना? And why these questions are? Because federalism is highly dynamic in post 2009, like Article 370 application, governance overreach. Okay, then fiscal centralization, GST, but also examples of cooperation. There are various examples of cooperation federalism. For example, COVID management, Niti Aayog. So UPSC actually want a balanced critical evaluation. Okay. Now, what should be the approach? How to write this answer? Start with federalism concept. India in reality is a class federal, competitive and cooperative. Then you can discuss the recent developments. Now, what are the recent developments? If you see the centralized agency, then Article 370 removal, farm laws, bypassing state government and activism, then GST compensation delays, all these things are there. Then, with respect to cooperative, GST council consensus, joint COVID strategies, Niti Aayog forums, okay, all these things you can mention. Then you can evaluate whether these changes have eroded or reshaped the federalism. Then you can write the conclusion. You can end with the future pathway that there is a need for cooperative, competitive, that is hybrid federalism. This is how you can write a wonderful answer. And let me tell you, in your introduction, Code Granville Austin, जरूर नोट करिए. What did he say? Indian Constitution is cooperative federalism with strong center. So federalism in India is defined by the Constitution, and it is a system where power is divided between the center and state governments. Then case is here. What did he say? He described federalism as a method of dividing powers so that central and regional governments, they are each within their sphere, coordinate and independent. So this is how you can mention it in BB. Then how to write the body of the answer? In body of the answer, you can mention first instances of erosion. Instances of erosion. That there are various instances of erosion. Misuse of Article 336. Central agencies, delimitation debates, fiscal squeeze. Then there are instances of resilience also, like Supreme Court's SR Bombay doctrine, resilience. SR Bombay doctrine. So these things you can mention. Okay. GST Council Dispute Resolution 2023 Supreme Court ruling on daily services. Okay. So recent case CM Forum, opposition alliance challenging the central law. And at last you can write a wonderful balanced conclusion. You can mention about B.R. Ambedkar in the conclusion. B.R. Ambedkar, he emphasized federalism as a means to achieve unity in diversity. So strengthening interstate councils, promoting dialogue, it can actually enhance the federal harmony, which actually ensures India's federal structure, which adapts to contemporary needs. So the scholars can mention cases here. Then you can also mention Raghuram Rajan Committee of 2013, who recommended fiscal federalism index. Okay, these are the things you can mention. Then question number 7A, initiating impediments to women participation in local governance in the process of political decentralization. Now why this question is asked? Now question UPSC ने इसलिए पूछा so that they can test your grasp about 73rd and 74th amendment. Then gender quotas, which is 33 to 50% and ground reality. So basically it aligns with the political empowerment, women political empowerment versus tokenism debate. Now what should be the approach? How to write introduction? First, define political decentralization and women reservation local bodies. Clear? Second important thing, you can identify structural, cultural as well as institutional impediments. ऐसे कौन से impediments? Clear? So you can start your answer with the 73rd and 74th amendment of 1992 and 1993, 33% quota, and in some states 50% quota. Clear? That you can mention. Then third, you can mention, you can include data, community or feminist perspectives. And you can end your answer with reforms, training, social change, quotas in higher legislature. Now, here you can quote in introduction Amartya Sen also. You can quote Amartya Sen in introduction. That is enhancing women's agency is crucial for the development, but traditional gender roles also factor their involvement. And then you mention about World Economic Forum. World Economic Forum. Now World Economic Forum का क्या कहना है? They actually highlight that women hold only 25% of political positions globally, which underscoring the need for systematic change to ensure the equitable representation in local government structures. Then, how will you write body of the answer? In body of the answer, you have to write the impediments. So, first is socio-cultural. Now, socio-cultural, patriarchy dominated, low literacy, mobility restrictions. Second you can mention institutional, like sarpanch pati phenomenon, lack of training, panchayat secretary pradhan pati, that phenomenon, weak devolution of power. Then economic lack of financial independence, poverty, political domination of local elites, party patronage, and you can mention the data from the Ministry of Panchayati Raj that around 1.45 million elected women representatives. Okay. So it is as per the Ministry of Panchayati Raj. So you can here quote various scholars also, like Nirmala Bosch. इन्होंने क्या कहा था that women in panchayat often lack real decision making power also. And Nirmala Bosch talked about gender tokenism at grassroots level. And then at last you can conclude your answer. Okay. And you can mention UN Women Report of 2022, only 14% of village councils are chaired by women and who are exercising full autonomy. Then question number 7, caste remains a vital axis for political mobilization in India. How would the caste census address the aspiration of people? Now, first of all, why this question is asked? Caste census 2020 Bihar survey and call for national caste census. It is actually politically explosive and this is linked to Mandal 2.0. Okay. So basically, UPSC wants to link caste politics with data-driven policy and representation as well as resource distribution. So how to write this answer? First, you have to state the relevance of caste as a political identity. How caste is relevant in politics in India. Then you can mention link caste census, the demand of OBC sub-categorization, social justice and proportional policies. Then you can discuss argument for and against. So easily you can write the introduction, caste census, that there is a demand to update the socio-economic caste data. Clear? And last, in 2011, that socio-economic caste data was incomplete. Clear? So these things you can mention. B.R. Ambedkar, he also mentions, he has also given views that for an inclusive society it is important. Clear? Then how to write body of the answer? In body of the answer, what are the things that can be mentioned? First, how caste has played its role in political mobilization? Political mobilization. So how caste has played its important role? So there are various caste-based parties like RJD, SP, Samajwadi Party, JDU. They are relying on caste identity. How it addresses the aspirations? Evidence-based reservation policy, recognition of OBC as well as subcaste, fiscal allocation, that is in Mandal Commission 2.0. Then there are various challenges that there is risk of weakening caste identities, data politicization, then administrative complexity will be there. And then last we can easily give the introduction. That caste census can democratize the representation, but it must be accompanied by developmental equity. Then what are the scholars that can mention this question? Christopher Jefferson, very important. Caste is the democratization of democracy in India. Mandal Commission. It is based on the outdated 1931 census and there is demand for updated legitimate data. Okay, so these are the things you can mention easily in your answers. Then last question 7. There is debate on the procedure for the appointment of Chief Election Commissioner and Election Commissioners to the Election Commission of India, analyzing its various aspects. Now, why this question? First, it is triggered by Supreme Court ruling. There was one Supreme Court judgment, and that case was Anu Baratwal case. Now, This Arun Parwal case has been mandated that there should be a committee for the appointment until Parliament legislates. There should be one committee. ठीक है? So basically, what it is reflecting on the independence of Election Commission of India versus various executive documents. That is why my question is asked. Now, what should be the approach? How to write? First, we have to present constitutional provisions with respect to Election Commission of India, that is Article 324. That present appoints on the advice of Council of Ministers. Then you can mention the body, discuss the Supreme Court interventions, proposed models as well as concerns. Then you can include comparative perspective as well as reforms. So, a simple way, write down a wonderful introduction and start with Article 324, which envisages a multi-member commission, election commission, but left appointment procedure to the Parliament and it is never legislated. Okay. Now, this is the most important thing. So, currently President appoints election commissioners as well as election commissioner based on the Prime Minister's advice, which has actually raised a question. That is why there are various experts like B.P. Jeevan Reddy. Now, B.P. Jeevan Reddy has advocated for a collegium which ensures the impartiality. Clear? So the Office of Election Commission of India is created under the Article 324, and it actually plays a very important role in democratic system, democratic integrity. Clear? Then in body of the answer, you can mention the current process first. What is the current process? Executive dominance is there, and there are allegations of bias. Then what was the Supreme Court ruling that you can mention in 2023? Supreme Court ने क्या कहा? So interim collegium should be there, and who should be there in this interim collegium while appointing the this Election Commission of India? PM should be there in this collegium, leader of opposition, and third should be Chief Justice of India will also be there. So what are the debatable aspects? Independence versus accountability, political neutrality. And then you can give various comparative examples of South Africa and Canada. They actually use the bipartisan parliamentary panels. Then at last you can conclude transparent appointment should be transparent, bipartisan process should be there, which is essential to restore the Election Commission of India's credibility as a core job of democracy. Okay. Then important scholars, T.N. Session. A weak commission produces weak democracy. Then ADR report, decline in public confidence in the Election Commission of India due to perception of partisanship. So these are the things you can mention. Okay. Now, last question number 8. It has 3 parts. The decision to conduct a population census 2027 has reopened the debate on delimitation in India to discuss its various aspects. This is something which is related to current affairs. Now, census 2027 will be the first after 2011. Okay, and in 2021 it was postponed, and it is crucial for delimitation in post 2026, which can reshape political representation. Okay. So basically, UPSC tests your ability to connect demographic representation because it is a part of federal politics. Then what should be the approach? Start with the background. That delimitation was frozen from 1976 to 2026. Why? Promote family planning and next census key for seat distribution. Then second important thing you can mention, explain what is delimitation. Redrawing the parliamentary or assembly constituencies based on the population, that is called as delimitation. Then you can analyze various aspects. What are the constitutional aspects? Mention Article 81, 82, 170 and Article 330. Clear? Then mention about delimitation. Then mention the federal aspect, southern versus northern state tension. Because southern states, they have actually controlled the population, clear, but northern state, population explosion. So that is also there. Then you can mention political aspect, north-south divide, regional dominance concern, that north may be dominating in the politics. Then social representation of women, SC, ST, addresses. Then at last you can end your answer with balanced forms. Okay, this is how you can write the answer. In introduction, you can also mention about the amendment. Mention the freeze by 42nd Amendment 1976 and 84th Amendment 2001. That is why 2027 is crucial. Okay, so these things you can write down in your answer. Then you can mention the views of Pratap Mahamehta. Now, Pratap Mahamehta, he actually argued that delimitation is crucial for maintaining the democratic equity. But it also raises concerns about regional imbalances as well as political power shift. Then, body of the answers already have discussed that what are the things that you have to mention different aspects. You can mention in your question easily. Okay. Then you can mention the scholars like Christopher Jefferson. He was of the majoritarian in the representation. And at last you can conclude your answer. As per the political analysts like Yogendra Yadav. He said delimitation is not just a technical exercise, it is deeply political and that affects the very fabric of our democracy. So these views you can mention in your conclusion. Okay. So a simple way you can write this answer. Now, next question. With reference to Nehruvian perspective of planning and economic development, examine how the phase of economic planning in India has laid the foundation of modern India's economic growth. This question is related to economy also, but this question is easy. It is a part of the SIR syllabus because we actually revisited the Nehruvian legacy in light of ongoing criticism of socialism as well as liberalization. Clear? So this is actually going to test the understanding of planning commission era 1951 to 64 and its long-term impact. Okay. So how will you write the answer? Briefly outlining Nehru's perspective that he wanted mixed economy, democratic socialism, state-led economy, clear, or state-led industrialization, scientific temper. So these things you can mention. Then you can mention various key initiatives. Key initiatives like first 5-year plans, है ना? So 5-year plans, important 5-year plans, first, second, and third, which belongs to the time period of Nehru. These 5-year plans focusing on agriculture, heavy industry as well as dams. Various institutions have been created like IITs, AIIMS, SAIL, DRDO. Foreign policy can be with non-alignment, import, substitution. Then at last we can evaluate that how we laid the foundation for self-reliance, infrastructure, but also inefficiencies because of license Raj. Clear? So how to write this answer? So you can write wonderful introduction here. Okay, wonderful introduction. Like Nehru called dam as the temple. Nehru calls PSUs as the temple of modern India. Then you can mention body. In body you can mention first, second, third. 5-year plan. First 5-year plan was based on agriculture and community development 50-26. Second 5-year plan is also called as Mahalanobis model. Mahalanobis model based on heavy industry focus. Third is based on mixed results. Okay, mixed results. Now why 5-year plan has given mixed results? Because of the China war discussion. But various foundations have been laid, like PSU dominance, Green Revolution, groundwork, then one can say space and nuclear research. Then you can mention the limitations, neglect of employment conditions, over centralized plan. Okay. And at last you can mention the conclusion, and in conclusion you can mention about the Nehruvian planning that has actually created base for 1991 liberalization and India's IT manufacturing takeoff. Clear? So here you can mention important scholars like Pranab Bardhan. Pranab Bardhan कहते हैं that Nehruvian era built a state capitalist class alliance. Amartya Sen said he praised focus on education and public health as long-term assets. That is why he praised the Nehruvian era. And the last question in section B is 8C, illustrate with example how political parties in India have played a crucial role in drawing the historically disadvantaged group into mainstream political system. This question, why this question is asked? Because UPSC wants to test party system role. Party system role. So UPSC wants to test this party system role in deepening the democracy, especially for who? Especially for SC, ST, OBCs, okay, Dalits, women, minorities, everyone. And as we have seen, questions have been asked almost from all the topics. This is something which is related to party system. Now, what should be the approach? First, define disadvantaged groups. Dalit, ADIC, minority. Yeah. Second, explain the mechanism, representation via party tickets and reserved constituencies. Second, mobilization. Mandal politics, Dalit, Bahujan politics, then tribal autonomy movement. And third, policy influence, SC/ST Act, Forest Right Act, OBC quota, all these things you can mention. Then you can give the examples. What are the examples? BSP, Dalit Party, SAPA, RJD, OBC Party, IAC, Initial Affirmative Action, then BJP, non-Yadav and OBC, Pasmanda Outreach, Left Parties, land reforms, based on land reforms, tribal support. So overall, how do you write this answer? Introduction का बहुत अच्छा समझिए that political parties क्या है? Political parties are vehicles. Vehicles of what? Vehicles of representation and social mobility. Social mobility. And this is given by whom? Rajni Kothari. Okay, Rajni Kothari. Then in body, you can mention about Congress era. In body, mention about Congress era. Okay, like SP, JDD, RJD. Clear? किस तरीके की पार्टी बनी कांग्रेस एरा में, ये सारे पॉइंट बाहर आ गए। तो बेसिकली कांग्रेस एरा ये यू सी, तो कांग्रेस एरा अगर आप देखें, इट इज द अलायंस ऑफ शेड्यूल्ड कास्ट फेडरेशन एंड ट्राइबल रिप्रेजेंटेशन। मंडल एरा ओबीसी मोबिलाइजेशन स्टार्टेड, जिसमें आ जाएंगे एसपी, जेडी, आरजेडी। दलित एसेशन, बीएसपी एंड अम्बेडकर मूवमेंट। सो कांग्रेस एरा, मंडल, Dalit, clear? Dalit assertion, clear? All these eras you can mention. Here you will see which party, Bahujan Samaj Party. Then you can mention about women politics. That means INC and BJP. Reservation bill of reservation bill 2023. That you can mention. Apart from this, you can also mention about left parties who are promoting the women panchayat leaders. Okay. Left parties who are promoting women panchayat leaders, they can talk about minorities also in the body of your answer. Okay. Congress pre-1990s. Then AIM, then IUM, and all these things. And at last we can conclude that parties acted as channels of inclusion, but often instrumentalized identity for vote banks. And then convention scholars like Christopher Jefferson, caste parties created silent revolution of the lower caste. Zoya Hassan, इन्होंने क्या कहा है? Zoya Hassan said mainstream parties used reservation policies as a tool for political accommodation. So these are the things that you can mention in your answer. So this is all about PSIR paper 1. We have discussed all the questions. So overall you see the paper was not tough but also not easy. It was average. This time they have asked in section B, in paper 1 section B, they have asked various questions from current affairs. Also, almost we have seen almost in section B, paper 1, almost they have covered all the topics from PSIR syllabus. Clear? From section they have covered almost all the topics. Clear? So this is all about PSIR paper 1 mains optional 2025. This is how you should attempt all these questions. I hope this much is clear to all of you. Now, in the next video, we are going to discuss paper 2, which is also very important in PSIR, which is something related to comparative politics and international relations. So that we will be discussing separately in the next session. Thank you so much.